Hey, how you doing? This is John, and welcome to John's Long Box. I'm here with Michael Odin, and you threw me for a loop because we were talking earlier how Twitter handles become people's faces, and you were on my channel before, but I didn't recognize you until I saw your face, and then I was confused. But you explained it all, so there you go.
Hey man, it happens. It's the way that the internet works, especially with Twitter. When like I work on a lot of titles, so like whenever I come out with a new book, I kind of alter my profile a little bit to target it towards whatever thing I'm working on at that point in time. So like when I was last here, I was on here. I can't remember if it was for the Embrace 2 or the Embrace Kickstarter. It was one of them.
It was the Embrace. I don't remember which number.
Yeah, so but like it was a blast, and at the time you were doing your Heroic Tales book, which I actually just finished reading. It's one of those things where I've had it on my shelf, and I've been like, I'll read that here this week, and I was like, I'm literally about to go on the guy's show. It's kind of a shitty thing. I've had his book for ages. I've been meaning to read it, and so I gave it a read.
I have you can't see, and I don't want to move the camera, but I got two huge stacks of comics that I haven't read yet. One stack is older comics, and one stack is newer comics. But the thing is, this newer comic stack is getting so big that, like, Dave Lucarelli was on the other day. His comic is now on the bottom of the because I get stuff, I put it there, and then I buy newer stuff.
I completely understand,
and then I forget.
It's 100% understandable. I'm exactly the same, and it's just one of those things where I was like, I've literally had this and like brought it with me to work and everything, and be like, yeah, I'll get to it, and then I was like, I'm on John's show, like I need to read it.
So you just read it, and we were talking a little bit about the comic. I said let's save it. So even though you have a campaign, you're launching in what, an hour or so?
Yeah, at 8 p.m. on the dot over at Red Valkyrie. Very excited.
So this is your Kickstarter, and for some reason, okay, I hit the wrong button. That's why I was going to say for some reason your campaign's not coming up. But let's bring up your campaign before we talk about my comic. Let's. There could be an earthquake, and then you don't get time or whatever. Who knows? So you got a comic called Elysian Feilds, and when you were like, hey, can I come back on your channel? I'm like, I don't know this guy. I don't know Elysian Feilds, because you did the two things. You changed your name. You changed your avatar. You might as well have changed, everything on Twitter. I'm like, but I reckon.
Oh, dude, trust me, I get it. Well, as I said the last time I was on here, I was promoting the Embrace. This is Elysian Feilds Reborn, which is actually a reboot. The first book that I did when I came into the NDC was Elysian Feilds issue 0. I had some pretty solid success with the 0 issue, and then like promptly fell on my face on book 2. And it was very much a thing of like, every now and again, I would like half-heartedly play with it and try and like remaster or do something like that. But other projects were taking up my time, and so I focused on that. But
so what do you mean you fell on your face? Like, what happened?
So the first campaign was a lightning in the bottle moment, right? It's like peak crowdfunding 2020, right? Pandemic was going on. Everyone was getting the stimulus checks. And so everyone was just throwing money around, right? And so my first campaign was a comedy of errors. And I did learn a lot from it. But I kind of got a bit big for my britches. And so I actually turned a solid profit on the 0 issue. And so I took that, immediately invested in the second book, and learned a lot of lessons in the School of Hard Knocks. I technically made comparable amounts in terms of funds, but it was a book that was twice as long, almost twice as expensive. And as a result, I technically made a similar amount, but with way fewer backers. And it was very gut-wrenching.
For my campaign, I didn't know what I didn't know, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, I was just like, I want to write a comic. I had a good artist. I got a great colorist. I found a good letterer.
And that you did. Renzo Rodriguez is fantastic. It is. I've talked with Renzo a couple of times. It's always been a thing of every single time I have something for him, he goes, dude, I'm booked. And then I go,
yeah, he's got like, I'm glad for him. I'm not jealously hoarding them. You know what I mean? Like, I want him to get as much money as he possibly can. You know, the guy's got kids and everything.
100%.
I would feel so responsible for his child's welfare if I was the only one he was working for. You know, campaign bombed, we're done. And now, but he'll stand on his feet. Anybody would be lucky to work with him. And Oscar and Daniel are two great colorists. But I made the comic. I wrote the comic. You know, I got it all ready. I found a printer. I talked to somebody who printed books. I really like the way their books printed. Brian Bowers, Wolf and Batsy books. I was like, these look excellent. So I called up the printer, and then the printer's like, I can't use these files. Like, I'm just sending them the files. You know, I didn't know that I needed
everyone has that experience. I had the same thing. The first printer I used, I don't use them anymore, but like the first printer I used, I remember when I sent him, is like, so I'm going to assume you've never made one of these before. I'm going to help you, but just so you know, this isn't generally like how this is done. I did this. So there's a lot of that over the years. Like, I'm at a point now where like I know, like, I have a very good rapport with my letterer, and so I just go, yo man, like, I will throw in a little bit extra. Just please make sure that they're formatted. These are the specs that we need, just as a way to kind of take something off my plate and expedite the process.
Yeah, I had to hire a pre-press guy. I was like, what is pre-press? I didn't know. I thought, okay, everything's ink, it's lettered, it's colored. Here's the pages. Boom, 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 boom.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
I didn't know. I didn't know. You know, and I had a couple-page spread. They had to make sure that opened up on the right. I was like, oh.
So dude, that was one of the things that like I learned. I made sure that I kind of learned that early on, because when you're the way that I taught myself was I had I'm not sure if you ever read it, but Marv Wolfman put out this beautiful miniseries called Up in the Sky. It was a Superman book.
Yes, I read that.
He did a collector's edition, and it actually had a copy of his script for like the first issue in there. And so I literally taught myself how to write a comic book script by reading that. And as I was doing that and coming up with like art breakdowns and everything like that, I noticed like, well, you know, double page spreads are always even, like it starts on an even page, goes to an odd page. And so like, that was just a thing I learned. Like, oh, okay. So this is like how it works. Cause you've got printing is multiples of 4 and everything like that. Like, it's,
I didn't know. I had to scrounge up an extra page, you know, so, you know, things like that, you know, so many things. Like, we would talk about criticism of my first comic, and I got to say, like, it was generally received well. I had a few odd criticisms. One person
gonna get those.
I didn't like the race mixing. I was like, "What comic did you read?" You know what I mean? But whatever.
On top of that, why would that be a problem? People fall in love with who they fall in love with. It doesn't, like, whatever.
But I seriously was wondering, did you read somebody else's comic and get mistaken? But anyway, my motto is, what would Stan Lee say? True believer, next issue will be even better. But 99% has been people just like, oh, it was your first comic, it was good. You know, you could do this, you could do that, you could do. So,
and I would agree with that. It's a very solid comic for like a first time creator. There's definitely room for growth. I think we were talking a little bit about it in the back room. I think that one of the biggest things, and this is something that a lot of writers struggle with, like myself included, is pacing, right? Like, you know, giving yourself enough page time to tell the story you want to tell and handle all the stuff. There is a lot of interesting plot threads that you introduced with certain characters. It didn't give them enough time to breathe, and everything was moving so fast. I think that there are certain things that you could have used and set up in like a second or third issue.
Absolutely. And like I said,
kind of stuff that's I think the big thing.
Most of my criticism is it's like, yeah, I agree, because I was like, I don't want to bore people by too much, like, you know what I mean? So I cut out so much stuff that I think maybe I cut out too much.
And that's one of those things where it's like, I think one of the biggest undervalued assets of the indie scene is having a good editor. And an editor isn't just, oh, I'm here to make sure that your word, that you're not misspelling words, this, that, the other. It's, they go through and be like, okay, I see what you're trying to say here. This is why this works. This is why this doesn't. Because it's important. It's important for you to have somebody that tells you, hey, man, great job with this, that, the other. This isn't lifting the way that you wanted it to. And if you want, like from a standpoint of, I mentioned pacing and introducing interesting plot threads that you don't give enough time to read. If you want, I can give you a couple of examples. I've got your book
like
right
I said, this is coming from a guy who is trying to help. One person said there wasn't enough of his family, and I was like,
yeah,
I totally agree. I want to put more family in it, but I also just wanted it to be, getting your toes wet in the world. But yeah, go ahead. Good.
So I think, sorry about that. My dad was coming in and asking if I wanted ice cream for dessert. I'm like, I'm good.
And you always say yes to ice cream. Always say yes.
I would normally, but I'm actually trying to cut down a bit, and I already.
If I can give you advice, always say yes to the ice cream.
I know. So let's I think that there are two things right off the bat. So first, the character Regina. You have her. She pulls the whole "I'm gonna jump off" and she gets saved. This is a very interesting character dynamic. I think that having this be her introduction and it all be resolved in like literally a page, that needed more air to breathe, right? Because this is your first introduction to this character. I think that was something that you could have had her appear in a couple of these crime scenes in the first issue and have him just kind of be like, it's like, all right, that if you give her attention, this is just going to fuel
right.
Her. Like let's kind of.
I totally agree. I was just afraid I was never going to get to an issue 2.
No, I understand, and like that's a genuine fear, because at the end of the day, a lot of people don't even make it to 5 books in this this sector. It's a risky game. It costs a lot, and it's very much a thing that you do because you love it, not because you're going to be making bank off of it.
No.
The other thing was this entire fight with Robo Bug. I think that's his name.
Robug.
Robug. So first things first. You and I, when I was on here last, had a very fantastic conversation on the fact that this character is based off of Marcus Aurelius in a very, very large way. And so when I see a guy show up that's a bad guy in a scorpion, where does my mind go as someone who's clearly a fan of classics? Egypt. The Praetorian Guard.
Oh, okay.
So I was kind of hoping that this guy was going to have a little bit more, there was going to be kind of an element of maybe he's a former ally turned rogue or something like that.
Oh, but I didn't think of that. Okay, yeah.
Because at the end of the day, what was what happens with Marcus Aurelius? Obviously, he passes his line down to Commodus, and Commodus causes what? The end of the Pax Romana. And so who kind of take over for the crisis of the 3rd century after that? The Praetorian. They're selling off the crown every 5 seconds and killing whoever isn't paying them.
The least. Who will make us? Yeah.
Correct. So I was kind of hoping that and that was more from we had a conversation about it. And so my historian brain clicked in, was like, oh man, he's fighting a guy in a scorpion thing. From the primary sources that we have, the scorpions, the freaking emblem of the Praetorian, let's go. And then he's just kind of like a stand-in for Mole Man from Fantastic Four, which is fine. Yeah. Really interesting stuff. But and I liked that he kind of discovers what Patriarch's true power is. but I think that, again, this is one of those things you needed some more real estate to build that, and like kind of showcase that he's he's analyzing the guy's abilities as he's fighting him. And it's one of those things of like, why is he able to deduce this now as opposed to other times? Because you very much alluded that he's a recurring threat.
Right.
So why now? What is it about now?
Yeah, that was my big. I left out a couple of caption boxes that I didn't notice, but it was. I'm not making excuses, but like he already went through a whole day of fighting villains. He was at the point of exhaustion. And
no, sloppy, 100%, and you do a decent job of showcasing that from Patriarch's perspective.
Right.
But the big thing here is that when you have a villain discover the secret to the power of the hero, that's no longer the hero's journey, it's the villain's. So you need to give the villain real estate to give him the ability to come up with that. Otherwise, you have what happened in a little film that you might have heard of called Batman versus Superman, where Lex Luthor just magically has knowledge that he hasn't earned throughout the entire film, and as a result, you end up with what WB ended up with Batman versus Superman. But the point is that you did a very solid job. There are a lot of things here that you do very well with. Generally speaking, most of the characters have individual voices, which is something that a lot of new writers
saying that. Thank you.
Yeah, a lot of new writers have a lot of issues with. Like it's a very difficult thing, and that's one of those things where you kind of need to be taking some form of writing class.
Because the funny thing is, the biggest negative I got was people didn't like that he went hunting and killed that elk. I was just like, I was like, okay, that's. I'm trying to stop.
You're establishing that he is a guy who kind of lives off the grid.
Right.
And I will say that like tonally, it doesn't necessarily mesh with the rest. It might have been good to kind of have a page where like he gets back is like, oh man, there's nothing for dinner. I need to go I forgot to get dinner,
right,
or something like that, and then have him do that. But like at the end of the day, I didn't really see a problem with that. I think that the big issue is that you needed to give yourself a little bit more real estate to kind of build up.
Yeah, I was
certain key plot elements.
I again, this is great because this is all criticism that I absolutely agree with, and I think it's helpful. I was so thinking about the page count, and then I'm like, I can make the page count whatever I want, because so. Yeah, you're absolutely right. But I also like it's got to be whatever. I sound like I'm making excuses.
No, dude. But like at the end of the day, page count is important,
right?
Because we're not DC or Marvel, right? We're not Image. We're not any of these guys. We don't have big distribution chains set up. We aren't getting tons of money to make these books. We're effectively footing the bill on our own and then trying to recoup investment, right? Like that's the indie business model, for lack of a better term. But so keeping it in mind of, okay, what can I realistically, recoup is important, because that determines the longevity. If you go out there and try to make a 100-page graphic novel as your first title, and this is again going back to School of Hard Knocks, second book. I did I think it was Pyramid Gambit was, I think, fifth. Issue 0 was a little over 25 pages. Pyramid Gambit was a little over 50, I think. Pyramid Gambit did not do well, and there were a lot of reasons for that. But at the end of the day, it became way too much for me to recoup. And even though I had a pretty sizable chunk done before we even went to the crowdfunding, because I actually turned a pretty good profit on the 0 issue.
You're doing better than most. Most people don't make any money on their first comic. So good for you.
100%. But again, reiterating, lightning in a bottle moment.
Right.
I was there during the crowdfunding boom of 2020, where literally like everyone was making the most money that they were making. Cyberfrog had just made Wreck Planet had just crossed $1 million, right? Like everybody was like, at this point, mainstream was pencils down.
Right.
So there were no new comics coming in, none at all. The only market was indie. So we had a monopoly on the market. Everyone was getting monthly stipend checks. Like there were all sorts of things that factored into that, and you can't rely on that because that's obviously not going to last forever. So, it was just one of those things where I overestimated what I was capable of, and I overextended myself on my second book, and as a result, that almost broke me. Like I almost stopped doing comics after that. It was only because of the embrace that I really stuck in. And that's brought me here today.
Art, I believe that art is it's tough. I wish I stuck with it too, Sid Eater. I at one point my friends thought I was a good artist, and at one point my mother met Mike Carlin at a wedding. My mother worked with Mike Carlin's mother, and they're at a wedding, and she's like, "Oh, my son John wants to draw comic books," and he was polite. He's like, "Oh yeah, have him." I'm like, "Mom, I can't draw." You know what I mean? But
dude, I feel I'm a passable like figure art. Like I can draw like pretty solid profiles and like still figures. Once you try and put action or put environments or anything like that,
perspectives.
Nope.
Yeah. I could draw Superman.
Not your guy.
As Superman, but nobody would pay for my drawing of Superman. You know?
I mean, I'm sure that there are like everyone says that, but there are always somebody who does. Like most people that don't actually work in this industry will see anything resembling half decent art and be like, "Oh, that's really cool," and I'll spend $10 on that.
That art like the best guy in his high school class, but it's nowhere near professional.
Yeah.
Like and I was one of the 3 best comic book artists in my high school class. Keep in mind there were 70 guys in my high school class, so small pool. The other question and I'll get off my book now, but because we'll talk about your book. But a couple of people criticized this, and I wondered, did I make a mistake or whatever? And me and you kind of synced up. But the Patriarch, spoiler to anybody who didn't read my comic, didn't beat up Boss Moxie. He psyched him out and intimidated him.
I didn't care about that. I thought that was fine because again, a lot of this also came from. In fact, I will say this: I was initially about to get very annoyed because he effectively makes a Superman style threat, like he has Superman's powers. I was like, that's not the powers you give to a guy that's modeled after Marcus Aurelius,
right?
Like that's not the power set you give to that guy. And then he runs off, and then somebody says, like, since when do you have X-ray and heat vision? And he just goes, never said I did, but he didn't know that.
I don't. That
like,
was
I know I don't actually have those abilities, but he doesn't know that. Right. And so then I was just like, okay, yeah, I'm good with that because and a lot of that does have to do with the fact that again, we had talked at pretty good length on how Aurelius inspired your vision of Patriarch. And so like that, like subconsciously, that's going to be how I compare him. And, there was actually a comic I read recently where the creator had a superhero called Odysseus and gave him just straight up Superman powers. And I was just like, this doesn't work.
No, absolutely
because not. Odysseus isn't the guy that goes and punches you in the face. He's the guy that tricks you into falling off a cliff.
Right. Odysseus should have Loki powers or something.
Or honestly, if you were going to make a modern interpretation of Odysseus, really the person that you draw from is Batman. Trojan horse, getting Polyphemus drunk and blinding him.
Right.
Tying himself to the mast to resist the siren song. 6 torches to his men to get through Scylla. Not
even he lied to Circe to get past. You know what I mean? Like he's not
Yeah.
above trickery and deceit. That's why
He's like he is the mind. He
Right.
is the guy that you have do that.
I don't think
like
he
yes.
punched or stabbed anybody in any Odysseus story.
Well, like
shot his
Odysseus is Odysseus is a very capable fighter. When you look at the stories from the Little Iliad in particular, when Achilles dies, and we can even use this to roll into Elysian Fields once I finish this little tangent. When Achilles dies and they have the funeral games of Achilles, Odysseus wins the funeral games. He beats everyone to include Diomedes and Ajax, who are considered the second best fighters in the Greek army. And so he wins the title of Aristos Achaeon after Achilles, and wins Achilles' armor. He is very capable, but he recognizes that his deadliest weapon isn't the sword, isn't the spear, isn't even his bow. It's his brain.
Right.
And what he can do with his brain could level cities. And this is actually Madeline Miller, who wrote the book Song of Achilles, wrote a follow-up called Circe, which I adore. I actually have it on my shelf somewhere. And in it, there's this whole section where Circe actually, towards the end of the book, Circe meets Penelope, and Penelope starts talking about Odysseus. And Circe's saying that, Odysseus had told her the story about him going crazy, trying to prevent himself from going to Troy. And Penelope laughs. He goes, "That's not what it was at all. He was always going to go to Troy." And point of fact is that Troy would have fallen in a year if he had brought his bow. But the bow was the weapon of the enemy. It was the weapon of Paris, so it had to stay here. And so even still, like he still probably could have taken it sooner, but the story needed to be right before he took it down. He was the most brilliant man I knew, and as a result, he was also kind of a piece of shit. So it's one of those things where like Odysseus is that character that is the smart guy. Now, if you're going to give anybody superpowers like Superman or anything like that, and you're pulling from archaic heroes, there are choices to be had. Odysseus isn't one of them, but let's say Achilles, who now we can segue this into what I'm doing.
Let me just finish this thought because and then we'll talk about your comic for the rest of the night. Of course, I'm concerned. But a couple of people got it. Like Patriarch is the father figure in Science City. He considers him like that's an extension of his children's habitat. This is where his children are going to grow up. He doesn't go in and start fighting. If you notice with Dr. Robug, he didn't throw the first punch either, but he gave him a chance to surrender, and psyched him out. And people are like, why didn't he beat him up? I'm like, because a good father doesn't just walk in the room and start smacking his kids.
Well, even Superman doesn't go in and immediately start roughing up goons, right, especially when it comes down to human threats.
Right.
Like at the end of the day, Superman believes in the light in everybody.
So that's one person told me, my first interaction with the Patriarch is he's a liar. And I was like, no, he's a good dad, bluffing, you know what I mean? Like, I'll smack you. The dad doesn't want to smack him.
I wouldn't.
What do you think?
I wouldn't say that he is a liar. He is using would you consider Odysseus unethical for coming up with the Trojan horse? Valid battle strategy, trick your enemy into lowering their guard. That's the same thing in boxing. Feints, like pulling a punch to draw out a haymaker, so that way you can get him under the chin when he exposes himself. It's the same thing. It's a bluff.
Okay.
It's a tactical decision to de-escalate.
Right. That's you're going to notice an issue too. If spoiler alert, when he meets the bad guy, his first tactic is going to be to de-escalate.
Yeah, and that's what a hero should do. De-escalation should always be the goal. It should never be, because at the end of the day, what does a fight do? Well, a fight puts people in danger.
Right.
Not just the villain, but the people around him. So if you can get the villain to leave without doing anybody harm, but de-escalating the situation, you've won. Like
Before Dave goes, I just want to say Genuine Comics are excellent, and they're my favorite superhero comics coming out right now. So
they're very good. Dave does a great job, and I have a blast working with him on American Bliss. It's a
you work with him on American Bliss? That was excellent.
I write it.
Oh, okay. There you go. Odysseus was impressed by Achilles as a fighter, but he had no desire for war. He preferred to outthink his enemies and charm people. Ajax was monstrously huge. Yeah.
I agree with this to an extent. I think that it's very disingenuous to say that Odysseus had no desire for war. I think that Odysseus had no desire to fight a war that wasn't on his own terms. Like, which is ironic because the oath of the suitors that bound everybody to the Trojan War was Odysseus's idea. So it was kind of a war on his own terms. But like at the end of the day, he had no qualms with fighting and going to war. Like, he has absolutely no qualms whatsoever in destroying the suitors. He has no qualms in threatening the Lotus Eaters. He has no qualms in doing any of that. And when he's at Troy, like, the sack of Troy is ruthless. And in some versions of the myth, the gods are actually pissed at the Greeks for how they handled Troy, and like a lot of those guys get punished for it.
Yeah.
And Odysseus is the manufacturer
for 10 years out of punishment.
Yeah. So, like, I wouldn't say that he had no desire for war. I just think that he didn't want to go to the Trojan War because it was inconvenient for him and it wasn't on his terms. But the moment he got brought in,
bloodlust, but a 10-year war was like, enough is enough. Let's just end this.
Yeah.
Yeah. I never thought he was like a peacenik. I thought he was just, I'm a Greek king.
Well, the whole story of that comes from the fact that when the suitors are called together, Odysseus tries to get out of it by pretending to be crazy, and so he's tilling his field. He's plowing. He's making it seem like he's plowing his fields, but he's plowing a field full of rocks. So he looks like he's just nuts. And effectively, like, the rumor is Odysseus has gone mad. Envoys are sent, and one of the envoys sees through it as an act, and so he brings the newly born Telemachus out to the field in the path of Odysseus's plow, and it becomes a game of chicken, and Odysseus yields and picks up his son and decks the envoy in the face, but like he's now duty bound to go to Troy. So like that's where he has no desire for war comes from. I don't think that it's that he had no desire for war. It was he didn't want to go to Troy because he knew it was going to be a long siege, that it was foretold to be a long siege. It was a otherwise impregnable city. The only other person that had done it was Heracles back during the Second Age of Heroes. And again, it just wasn't on his terms. And more than that, than anything, was I think Odysseus's issue is it wasn't how he wanted to go about it. Because I think, like, if you read the Odyssey in particular, he's very much a guy that's like, no, we're doing things my way. One
last question, we'll get to your book. What do you prefer reading, the Trojan War or the Odyssey?
You mean the Iliad or the Odyssey? I absolutely prefer the Iliad.
Oh, really?
Okay. I could give a TED talk on why I prefer the Iliad. I think that the ultimate thing is that I think that the Iliad is a more beautiful poem and is a better narrative. There's consequence, and it feels more in line with like Greek philosophy. I don't think Odysseus loses his crew, but at the end of the day, he's still king of Ithaca. He returns home. He's with Penelope. And at the end of the day, the cost of hubris should be enormous. I feel like Odysseus gets to, scoot past that.
When I took, that was my major in college, Greek history, Roman history. So I spent a lot of time studying both of them. And my professor, said, he goes, I don't believe in my gut that it was written by the same people, because I don't even think it was written in the same generation. Because one is about the glories of war, and one of them is about going home. It's two different sentiments.
So there's actually a theory to this. So the nature of those stories being different, I think, has way more to do with the fact that Homer was, if we're to assume Homer is an actual person and not anything, Homer is effectively transcribing an oral tradition.
Correct.
Right? And so when you look at Greek culture, especially when you're looking at mythology and those stories, there is this concept called arete, right? Which is obviously like the closest term to it in English is excellence. And arete is multifaceted. And the two major facets of arete are bis and metis. So bis is battle prowess, right? Like that's your Achilles. That's,
can you spell that? I'd never heard this term before.
Arete, A-R-E.
No, I know, yeah. We wrote essays about that.
Bis is B-I-S, metis, M-E-T-I-S.
Yeah, metis is more thinking and thought. And,
correct.
But I never heard this before. Thank you. I love when I get a new term. Now you know what I'm going to be researching tonight.
Absolutely. So effectively, these are the two coins. And so effectively, the Iliad is intrinsic to the bis side of the story, right? That's where you have people doing the most active forms of excellence, right? You have Diomedes fights freaking gods for 2 chapters, right? Like it, and Achilles becomes a monster in the last half of the book. But like it,
yeah, I remember very well because I read Thor Annual 7, where Thor joins the side of the Greeks, and I'm joking.
No, you're good. But like, point is that in the Odyssey, though, is like it's very much all of the problems have to be solved through pragmatic thought. It's all about using one's mind to overcome things instead of force. And so what you have here is the gradual shift of the warrior of force to the warrior of mind.
So
right?
Could you say it's like a battle of Ares versus Athena?
Exactly. Okay. I think that's a kind of perfect way to put it. Is
10 hours tonight.
Yeah, like I could. I could literally talk about this for like 3 or 4 hours. It's something that I'm incredibly passionate about. Which is why I made the book that I did, like why I did Elysian Fields, is I'm a huge mythology nut. So Elysian Fields is at its core effectively Mortal Kombat with heroes of mythology.
Okay.
Like when I was growing up, obviously as kids, we would argue who would win in a fight between our favorite superheroes. But like I was that extra nerd.
I have to pitch that at 8:30 we do It's Clobbering Time. That's exactly what we do.
Yeah, so
everybody's
effectively.
Yeah.
I didn't stop at superheroes, and neither did my very nerdy friends in middle school that were in my Latin Cartamen clubs and everything like that I was in. So it wasn't just superheroes. It was, hey, who would win in a wrestling match between like Heracles and Beowulf? Who would win a fight between Gilgamesh and Achilles?
I got to stop you for one question. I got to stop you and ask you a question. Have you ever played a board game called Unmatched?
No, I haven't.
Are you familiar with it at all? It's a 2-player battle game. You get little miniatures, and they're doing all like historical characters, mythological characters.
I'm going to have to get this. This is
you could literally have a fight with Bruce Lee versus Dracula, and now
so that's very much kind of the core of what we're doing with Elysian Fields, except it's all like cultural mythology characters. So like
that's what Unmatched is branching into now.
Yeah. So we've got, in this first book, you'll see the book starts off and you see Achilles in his final battle at Troy. So we establish his death and everything like that. But then it goes into the underworld where he's recruited for this tournament to fight at the behest of Hades alongside Heracles and Hippolyta against these heroes from different cultural mythologies that are on a level of skill unparalleled to anything that Achilles has seen.
And I really dig this artwork.
Oh man, we had some beautiful covers that we got done, and some just fantastic talent that we had. Like we had V. Ken Marion and Andrew Dollhouse, which is beyond my wildest dreams. It is such a good cover. And the cover that's got Hades with his team in his hand is by a complete up and comer that's in art school. I think he's like 19, 20 years old. Like he's young.
That is really
and
good.
He did this all himself. Like I wanted to kind of make a homage to the Supergiant Hades games, because the second game goes onto full platform release like here this week. I think it was a couple days ago. It got its full platform release. It's been in early access for a while. And so I wanted to have like a kind of cool nod to that. And I found this guy on ArtStation submitting like fan art to contests, and he's incredible. And so I hit him up and got like, he's incredibly professional, does a really good job. So yeah, like I very much had like, it's been kind of a dream come true coming back to this project and breathing it with a whole bunch of new life. So like if you happen to read the Zero issue, there are elements of that are here that are left over, that kind of serve as the bones.
So I missed the Zero issue. This is going live in like an hour or two, ladies and gentlemen. So will I be able to get a bundle of the Zero issue and then the
Zero issue is irrelevant? It's like this has like elements of the Zero issue, and I actually have the book right here. So this is one of our proof copies. These covers are just gorgeous. So it has like little bits of the Zero issue that are a part of it to kind of give it the bone and structure, but like everything else has been pretty much changed. You don't need to have read the Zero issue, and like the Zero issue, I'm not going to be reproducing that. Like it's one of those things where I acknowledge that was my beginning, but I kind of want to like very much focus on the fact that this is the path forward for the series, and I'm very excited about it. We have tons of things going.
I hate this. I'm bad at this, but what would be the elevator pitch for this? And I'm fully aware that I can't stand when people ask me that too. So
the elevator pitch I think that the elevator pitch really is just like, at its base level, it's Mortal Kombat with heroes of mythology. As you delve deeper, it's an analysis on whether or not we can escape the demons of our life. Okay. If we can really change, because that's really what's going on with Achilles, right? Is he's brought into this tournament. When he dies, he goes and he's brought to these like in my original pitch for the Zero issue, I said that he was brought to the shores of peace. He's in this eternal memory with Patroclus, and he's happy. And then he gets pulled out of it to go fight in this tournament. And he's initially not happy, but the moment that he starts to actually get into the swing of things and fight, it's like the old animal comes out. And so you have this constant battle internally with Achilles of, is he going to overcome the person that he was in life, or is he going to succumb to it?
Well, this looks so good. I'm just really, the colors are outstanding. Who's the colorist?
The colorist is a guy named Ruvian. Hold on one second. I got some pretty distressing news.
Oh no, is everything okay? Do you need to go?
Yeah, I might not. Red Valkyrie might not be able to host my my launch here at 8. I might have to wait till 9 with Bancroft. Bancroft, because their internet just completely crapped out.
Oh, well, Bancroft is a wonderful guy.
Bancroft
is awesome. He's going to launch my book next Friday. at 9 p.m. So there you go. I'll get a plug for myself on my own channel. Bancroft is the best. So, you know.
Yeah, no, and I'm sure if I hit, I can hit him up here. But anyways, point is
Kickstarter.
Huh?
How is Kickstarter treating you?
I actually, so in terms of creating the campaign page, infinitely better than Indiegogo. Like,
I had
infinite
difficulty with Indiegogo.
So I had like Indiegogo was where I started. I stopped using Indiegogo because the past couple of campaigns that I've been on with them, I've been shadow banned, and there's been no attempt to resolve anything. And the fact that they charge, I think it's like 8%.
And there's no way to fix anything. There's nobody to talk to. There's no way to resolve your issues with Indiegogo.
Like, yeah.
And luckily, I had no issues with Kickstarter, so I can't say anything bad about Kickstarter. But I'm a fund my comic guy. Like, I believe, you know, I'm going to stagger off mine. I'm going to launch a Fund My Comic, and then maybe 2 months later, I'll do Kickstarter. But I'm done with Indiegogo. If you're going to shadow ban me, how dare you charge me?
Yeah, no, like I think that it's complete crap. But it is what it is. Like I'm just not going to give them my business anymore.
Right.
You know, between all of my campaigns that I have had on there, I've brought in, I want to say like 50,000 on Indiegogo. But that is like that's just that, like, that's nothing to them, so they don't care. And
you did 50,000 on one campaign or 50,000 on
no, between all of the campaigns that I've done. So like
campaigns,
like so there's Elysian Fields issue 0, Elysian Fields Pyramid Gambit. There's the Embrace, the SPQR's Bizarre Adventure. There's Judex, which was technically run by my friends over at Global Frequency Studios, who I collaborated on the book with. There, and then there's the Embrace 2. And so between all 6 of those campaigns, and there's Aquila of the Phoenix Guard. I technically helped set that.
Why do I not know? I know the Embrace, and that was it. Why did I not know that you did these other Roman and mythological books? You know, I
mean, I've been around for a minute, man. I've been doing stuff.
I know. On this campaign, are you going to be able to pick up any of your other books?
Not on this one. I do intend on doing a Nine Realms catalog thing here pretty soon. That, but,
you know, I'd like to read mythological.
Like it, yeah, no, it would be great. Like the SPQR's book was so there's a very popular manga / anime called JoJo's Bizarre Adventure that I adore, and I got the idea to like smash Roman history into it, and so. It's SPQR's Bizarre Adventure Rubicon Invaders. And so you've got Julius Caesar as Jotaro and Pompey Magnus as Dio Brando. And it's like a recreation of their fight from Stardust Crusaders, except it's on the Rubicon River during the
I understood exactly half that conversation. I understand the Roman stuff, but I really don't know anime.
It's all good. Like, point is, it's a very dumb, fun manga parody. I had a really good time making it, and that was fun. The Judex was a very beautiful book. You can actually still get that on Indiegogo, where we took this silent film character that a lot of people think was an inspiration for Walter B. Gibson's The Shadow.
A real like a pre-existing character.
Yeah, like he's in the public domain, and I reworked him to be this cultural defender of Paris during the occupation in the 40s, and we had this beautiful black and white book. And you know, I wrote the initial draft of the script, which I brought to my friend Aaron Neff, who does brilliant work with his book Mavericks, and together we put our heads together and really freaking banged that script into.
Why didn't I hear about this?
I mean,
you got to send direct messages to me. Let me know when you're doing it.
I will, man. But that was the.
Anytime you launch a book, let me know, and
Yeah, man. Like I absolutely will. Like it's been one of those things that I've really enjoyed. But yeah. Yeah.
I'm trying to.
All right, I've just been informed my my launch stream with Red Valkyrie is no longer happening. So I guess 9 p.m. will be the new launch time.
Oh man. Well, I'm gonna be live at 9 p.m. doing its clobbering time. If for whatever reason you can't, message me. You're invited. Tell everybody, and
Bancroft. I'm sure because like I'm already scheduled with Bancroft. It was supposed to be the after party, but we'll just make it the launch. So like,
okay.
Like it is what it is. These things happen. Technical issues are a thing.
Well, we need it. Marcus Kellegrew, get in your van. This is what he does for.
I mean, hey man, I certainly wouldn't mind getting it fixed. But yeah, like it is just one of those things where like you just that's the most difficult part about the indie creator bit, right? Is there's so many people looking for new stuff, but it's very difficult to get new avenues to reach new markets.
Right.
And that's the most difficult part of this game is doing that.
Do you enjoy like what we're doing now, like going on other people's channels talking?
Yeah, I have a blast talking with people. I'm a very big people person. I like talking to people about this stuff. Not only just like to obviously talk about my books, but to talk about the stuff that I care about, whether that's comics, mythology, history, you name it.
Did you ever get the my second books, the Olympians by George O'Connor?
The name's familiar.
He was on my channel, and I keep looking over here, but I realized that I do have it. Okay, so this is his second series called The Asgardians. But
nice.
He did these. I got them all in hardcover. You could get them in floppy, but they're 12 books of the Olympians. So Zeus, Hades, Hera, and each.
So book, he effectively does like comics that profile each one of them.
Right, but they're also with lesson plans in the back and stuff. So it's
that's freaking awesome. That's great.
And he does this wonderful blend of making it, because some of these mythologies are kind of either suggestive, gross, or let's just leave it.
Dude, they're crude. I think is probably the best way to put it. Is they are. So when you're studying history, you have to take a lot of lessons on historiography, right? And so like the number one rule of historiography is you can never take a character or event out of the context of its period because nothing exists in a vacuum.
Right.
The morals
presentism drives me nuts when we judge Abraham Lincoln by today's standards or George Washington.
It's incredibly disingenuous.
Yes.
That's the whole issue is like everyone wants to look at these. Well, they're bad guys. Like, I mean, if you're judging anybody by today's standards in the past, they're going to come off looking a little bit bad at minimum. But like at the point is that without those people, you wouldn't have got to where you are now.
It's baby steps. What George O'Connor does is he tells the story of Saturn getting castrated, you know what I mean? And he does it in a way that it's less gross, but he doesn't shy about it. Like now I can't think of the story, but what Hermes had to pee on somebody, and he leaves the story in and makes it so it's like if you're going to read Greek mythology and you're a parent, this is the best way to me, I think, to introduce it because it's cartoony, it's got lesson plans.
Yeah, no, like it looks great.
It does a great job. It's historically accurate, like I'm talking about mythology, like it really happened. But you know what I'm getting? It's the most common story, and then he does bring up that there's variation stories. But to me, this is awesome. He does a great job, and he is a cool guy. He was on my channel. Now he's doing the Asgardians. And when he's done with the Asgardians, he says he misses Greece. Greece is his first. He's going to go back and do the demigods. So Achilles and Odysseus, all that stuff. So this is right for you. I don't know if you have kids.
I'll definitely like, and that would be a cool thing to go like talk with him and see if he's ever interested in doing a collab. Like, that's one of the coolest parts about indie is getting the opportunity to work with
me, I'll give you his email and stuff like that. You know?
Yeah, absolutely.
But the Greeks can appreciate potty humor as well. This is going to sound incredibly pretentious, but one of the things that we had to do in college was I took all these Greek classes, and the teacher wanted us to just write like an outline of a Greek play. So I wrote I'm mad at myself for even saying this, but it sounds so pretentious. So I wrote a Greek play. It wasn't that good. It was,
hey man, there's nothing pretentious about that. I actually have a comic book script that I wrote a while back. It hasn't been published yet, but I stylized it after the tragedies. It's called Ghost of Boeotia.
Okay, but this story is Alexander the Great is dead, and all the generals are dividing up the empire, and they can't decide. They're going to go to war.
So Deodakai, effectively, yeah.
They're sitting there like literally with their hands on their swords, and a slave comes by, and one of the guys trips him, and they see that he's a eunuch. So they start, this guy's a eunuch. Yeah, he's just been snipped, and they talk about why, and then they said, oh, it's so funny story, and it's Pyramus and Thisbe. He fell in love, and Alexander was coming in to conquer Thebes, and they wanted to consummate their love before they were going to die in this war or whatever, but there was a wall separating them, and the only way they could do anything was he put his manhood through the wall, and then she could only kiss him through the wall, and he got excited, and he was lodged in the wall, and when Alexander the Great came, he cut him, you know what I mean, to get him out of the wall.
It's very interesting. So Ghosts of Boeotia, also period of Alexander.
If you say Pyramus and Thisbe too, then
no. So effectively, what I have, you know about Battle of Chaeronea, right? Battle where Philip destroys the sacred band of Thebes, wins hegemony over Greece, right? And so effectively, what I have set up with Ghosts of Boeotia is you have a young member of the sacred band of Thebes, which according to which freaking historian was it? Allegedly a 300-man army comprised of 150 pairs of male lovers,
right?
With the intent, with the motive, with the modus operandi being you would fight twice as hard for the man that you loved,
right,
than just some rando neighbor. So they all die in this battle, according to history. But in this play, this young Theban knight, this member of the sacred band, and a few other young fledglings were protected by their paramours, and so they rise from the dead shields at the end of the first Stasimon, and swear a vow of vengeance against Philip. And they go after, and by the time they get to Macedonia, Philip's dead.
Okay.
So then they swear the Pelopidas swears an oath of vengeance against Alexander, and then there's a rumor that Alexander's dead because he's up in the campaign in the Balkans. And so then he goes back to they go back to Thebes and spread the rumor that Alexander is actually dead. And then Alexander comes to Thebes and they mount the defense, which leads to the destruction of Thebes. And it's set like a straight up Greek tragedy where everything that they do is to pursue this vengeance, and it it utterly destroys them and everything that they stand for. By the end.
My story, it devolves into fart jokes and getting you wee cut off jokes, you know what I mean? And at the end of this, they're making fun of this poor slave that they nicknamed Priapus, and poor Priapus is just humiliated, and they make fun of him so much that they're all laughing, and they're just like, okay, let's just settle on this treaty then, you know what I mean? And basically Priapus is wee getting cut off,
Yeah.
makes them all laugh, diffuses the situation, and now there's peace. But and my teacher said I like it, but his criticism was there wasn't enough fart jokes to make the average Greek laugh. Which brings back,
that's fair.
Yeah. So that was my foray into trying
And
to.
Sin Eater asks if anyone has seen Reign of the Conqueror. It is a very strange anime, but yes, I have seen it, and it is enjoyable. That's why I didn't
know it. Anime. Sorry, dude, and I don't know anime that well.
But it's not. I don't even think it's fair to call it an anime. It is a Western cartoon. It is kind of a Western cartoon. It was done by the guy who did the Eon Flux animated series for MTV and the Phantom 2040 as well back in like the 1990s. And it's weird, but it's a solid interpretation. I think the best.
It's like legit history of Alexander the Great, but like a weird.
It's very sci-fi. Like you look up a picture and you'll go, "Oh, okay, I see why he's saying that it's very weird." But like, and like Peter Chung has a very distinct visual style. Like it's out there. But I
will up my pretentiousness factor. I'll do a quick story. I also tried to write a humorous play about the Ark of the Covenant. So how pretentious is that? That went absolutely nowhere. Moses and Aaron arguing over the tabernacle, and then basically the Three Stooges building the tent every night, taking it down, falling down, and farting on it. It was embarrassing.
So Zach says, I can see how someone would think it would work, but I doubt it would. Adding romance to Rhodes, the Brotherhood sounds like a recipe for drama. It actually didn't. When you look at the primary sources and everything like that, the Sacred Band of Thebes is considered one of the deadliest fighting forces of their time. In fact, the Sacred Band of Thebes destroyed Spartan hegemony at what's called the Battle of Leuctra. Epaminondas and Pelopidas are the strategoi of the Theban army at that point, or they had a different word for it. Strategoi was for like the entire Greek army, but I think it was like Archon. But point is, they're the leaders of the army, and they utterly destroy Spartan supremacy at Leuctra. And Epaminondas creates the strategy of oblique flanking maneuvers that is what creates the Macedonian hegemony over Greece, because Philip learned all of that stuff.
Epaminondas' hammer, it was called. Yeah. That's what he used to defeat Persia. To the point where Alexander the Great supposedly wept at the destruction of the Sacred Band.
That's actually Philip was, because Philip had been a hostage there as a boy, and he learned probably, I would say, 80 to 90% of what he used to reform the Macedonian military during his time in Thebes. And when you say that he is a hostage there, it's not in the modern standard. He was a political prisoner. He was treated with the respects of his rank. And so he got an insight into the Hellenistic world that allowed him to conquer Greece, and really allowed him to give Alexander the education to do what he does in Persia. And not even just from a military standpoint, but from a standpoint of statehood. Alexander's ability to rule and govern the conquered as they wished to be ruled is a very interesting thing that showcases him being a figure well ahead of his time.
Yeah.
I wrote my senior seminar on Alexander's adoption of Persian customs, because when you read it in the Greek sources, it's, this is a sign of megalomania. But I don't think that that's the case. Philip knew that he would never be able to conquer Greece and be their king. So what does he do? He militarily subjugates them, beats all of their strongest militaries, and then forms a coalition at Corinth to go to war with the ancient enemy of the barbarians in Persia. This is the way that you rule over Greece, is you become the general of the Greek army, because they're not going to accept the rule of a monarch. And Alexander knew this. He applies the same thing initially, but as he goes into the Eastern territories, he's adopting these Eastern customs, not to spite his Macedonian peers, but to salve the wounds of defeat on his opponents. He rules over the Egypt. He goes into Egypt. They surrender completely willingly because they have despised being in Persian rule. And what does he do? He immediately goes to Memphis, has himself declared the heir of Zusamun, and establishes himself as a pharaoh. He doesn't call himself Basileus. He doesn't call himself Strategoi of Egypt. He calls himself pharaoh and connects himself intrinsically to the culture of the persons that he conquered. Does the same in frickin' Persia. When Darius III sends him a message after the Battle of Issus saying, hey, I'll give you these territories. Please just go home. Alexander responds and says, at the end, completely demolishes him. And at the end of his letter says, oh, and by the way, next time you message me, address me as by my title, Shah-an-Shah, King of Kings. He takes the title of the Persian, Achaemenid Persian monarchy.
He also wanted his soldiers to marry Persian women and unite.
Yes, that was the Susa weddings. I actually think that I do think that he wanted that, but that was way more him trying to make a peace offering after the Proskinesis scandal just completely blew up in his face. Because he was trying to interject the court practice of Proskinesis even amongst his own troops when they were in Persia, and this caused a massive fucking issue. And so that was really the tipping point, and that's where you will see a lot of Greek writers start to write about Alexander way less favorably after that. As I said, this is what I wrote my thing on. So I could go on about this.
I'm enjoying. I could sit there and listen all day long. I love this stuff, and at 20 years, 30 years out of college, geez, yes, I feel like I'm losing it all.
It's one of those things, man. You gotta go. There's a fantastic.
We don't get to talk about Alexander the Great on a construction site a lot, So I'm forgetting so much.
Pick this up. Fantastic read. The only thing I disagree with about this, about Alexander and this, written by Rachel Kauser, very good. The only thing I disagree with in this is that she tethers Alexander's adoption of customs and everything like that as a lesson learned in his failings in later campaigns. I think that there is some truth to some of that, but I genuinely believe that he actually got the ideas of this and they were ingrained into him by Philip, because Philip is the unsung hero in Alexander's story. His reforms make the Macedonian military the machine that it is in Alexander's time. But more than that, Philip is a very understated statesman. A lot of the primary sources always write him off as this kind of drunk.
It's funny that you said that, because when I was in school, my professor was just like, Philip conquered Greece. Alexander conquered the barbarians. He was very pro Philip,
Well, Alexander conquered the Greeks too. Make no mistake. Alexander sacked the fuck out of Thebes and he subjugated Athens. It's funny. I saw that this one YouTube channel did a thing of what would Alexander have done if he had lived, and one of the things was he would go back and repopulate Thebes. No, he freaking wouldn't. He lost no sleep over that. Everyone says oh, this was the biggest blight on Alexander's career.
Can you imagine he makes his way into China? How different the world would be,
It would. I actually don't think that he would have continued east.
You don't think so? He was done?
No, I think that if Alexander had lived, I think that he would have gone west, and I think that he would have gone into Africa, and he would have gone into Italy. Around this time, if you're going based off of when Alexander died versus what we have of Roman histories, what's going on? within 30 years, within a generation between the time of Alexander death and what's going on in Roman history, is you've got the Latin Wars. So I honestly think that what you probably would have seen is Alexander prevents the rise of the Romans and Carthaginians, because I think that he would have gone after North Africa and Italy.
Oh, okay. I
Like
imagine him going on and on and on, into China, whatever. Now,
like everyone thinks that he would have gone back east, and I think that, but I do think, and that was one of the points that she brings up in here that I actually really agree with, is I think that he got what he definitely wanted to go past that Hydaspes, but he got to see Okeanos. He sailed his fleet around the Persian Gulf. He saw the Indian Ocean, and that was enough. He kind of realized, okay, I've got to put this cat to bed. Done. And while he hadn't lost any battles over there, he took some pretty grievous physical injuries during the India campaign, in particular, smashed collarbone, and he almost died in one battle where they were besieging a place, and he gets in there by himself and gets shot up by a bunch of arrows, and his men come in and rescue him. They end up winning the siege, but Alexander does learn some huge lessons, and not just humility, but his position on the battlefield, and how, he is the focal point of the empire. He had an heir. He had he has several bastard children by the time he dies, but Roxana has a son. She just gets killed along with the baby when Alexander dies. I personally believe that he was assassinated, and more than likely Cassander was at the head of the plot, because literally within a year and a half of Alexander dying, Cassander's in Macedonia and kills all of his remaining relatives, his mother, his sister, his half-wit brother. There's a lot of writing on the wall, to me anyway.
I gotta reread all my Greek history. I'm forgetting so much. And Sin Eaters, first off, thank you for being here. It's a new name. Yeah, I'm a construction worker making comics. Who else is a construction worker making comics? I mean, again, I have a degree in Roman Greek history. I'm forgetting so much of it. That's why I love talking to you. You reminded me of stuff. I was a public school teacher, and I just couldn't deal with the politics. I got into construction, and like I said, it's not an everyday topic where we talk about the Epimonian hammer and the Gordian knot and all of these wonderful.
So I will say this: Cassander had a lot of reasons to hate Alexander. I mentioned the issue with proskynesis and everything like that. When Alexander initially tries to implement this into court, and there are Persians that are committing the act of proskynesis, which is not like bowing at the knees. It's actually a symbol where you kind of kiss your two fingers and go up like that. Cassander audibly laughs at the Persians that are doing this. Alexander loses his shit and throws Cassander up against a wall and pins him there with his freaking arm around the guy's throat. And then on top of that, Cassander's father, who was Parmenio.
Parmenio?
No, not Parmenio. Parmenio dies. Antipater, Alexander's regent back in Macedonia. When Alexander dies, Antipater is in his 70s. And he doesn't name Cassander as his heir. It's my opinion, Antipater was an officer of Philip's military. Antipater is the person that, when Philip dies, names Alexander as the next heir. Antipater was Philip's general, but he saw the promise of Alexander, and frankly, in my opinion, saw the son he wished he had in Cassander. And so when Alexander dies, Antipater doesn't leave anything to Cassander. And so Cassander's pissed. I genuinely, the more that I learn about, the more that I read about Cassander as a character, the more that I go, this guy was like I'm pretty convinced that he was responsible. And by that point, Alexander's shenanigans in the East had lost a lot of his confidence in his generals. And so I think that, he was able to sway enough of them to where they were able to execute a pretty like a successful poisoning plot. And I think that he died of poison. I know that there's a lot of things, or like medical things, where they talk about, because they talk about how Alexander's body was had gone without any sort of decay for about a week, that he didn't actually die when they thought he did. He was in a medically induced coma from a medical condition, and that very well may be the case. But I do think he was likely assassinated by his generals. And if I were to point a specific finger at anyone that I would believe is
I never
possible,
heard that before, but it makes sense. But my college professor was big on why can't I think of the name of the illness? Malaria. He was like, yeah, he goes, I think he had malaria. He had these.
Yeah, that's what the official thing was. He had like a cold or malaria or something like that. And it is true that he has kids, but as you pointed out, they were not respected or secure enough. I think they were pretty young. We have to remember Alexander was 33 when he died. Like he had just married, like Roxana, who was his official wife, his one of his official wives, had born. I want to say it was Heraclius is their son's name.
Alexander the Fourth.
Maybe I can't even remember. I'd have to go look, but like their child was very young. But he had a the daughter of one of his father's court exiles that was in Persia was his consort for a good chunk of this time, and they had a daughter who actually marries Seleucus. And is the ruler of the Seleucid Empire along with Seleucus. So I don't think that that's a viable. Yeah, he probably could have spent more time on that, but he was conquering, and nobody expected, not even in those days, that you're just going to drop dead at 32.
Right.
Especially when you'd faced every single mortal threat imaginable and overcome several different diseases by that point. I do think that this is very much a whole thing of Alexander likely would have slowed down a little bit. I do think that he would have continued expanding. I don't think he would have gone back east. I think he would have gone west.
Okay. How different would the world have been without the Roman Empire then?
That's my whole thing, is I think that he probably would have I wouldn't say prevented the rise of Carthage, but I think he would have annexed that territory, because he was interested in building naval warfare and naval development for exploration were things of particular interest of him.
I know I'm older than you just by a casual glance, but when I was a kid, Alexander was always kind of like a mythic, force of good, Well,
he continues to be
crapping on him. They think, he's just an oppressor, colonizer, whatever. What's your?
You want to know what's the
end on this? Because I have to get ready for my next show at 8:30.
I've got to message Bancroft and let him know as well.
But you're welcome to come back and talk mythology and Greek and Alexander the Great whenever you want.
We will get something set up, man. I have a blast talking about this stuff.
So what do you think? Was he a force of good, or was he just a Hitler?
No, I think that people look at the term great and they assume morality. Great doesn't mean good. Great is in the scope of the things that he accomplished. And to say that what Alexander accomplished was anything less than great is incredibly disingenuous. Was he a good man? Debatable. More than likely, the truth is nuanced. He had his moments where he was the best of his men. He had his moments where he was the worst, and he felt regret for those things.
A lot of the great sulk stories. He goes into his tent and sulks,
Well, look, I personally think that he regretted the destruction of Persepolis. If he was ever going to rebuild any city that he sacked, it would have been Persepolis. The only reason why he sacked Persepolis was Darius never surrendered. If Darius had surrendered after, I think that would be Gaugamela. If he had surrendered after Gaugamela, or even Issus, Persepolis would never have been sacked, because he would have been able to have Darius's surrender, have Darius crown him the new king of the new Shah of the Achaemenid Persians, and that would have been enough to ingratiate the Greeks for the redemption of the burning of Athens. I think that would have absolutely happened.
I agree with Zach Tan. I do think that he adopted too much Eastern ways for the average.
This was exactly the point of my senior thesis, when I like the senior seminar that I wrote, is that his adoptions of Greek custom of foreign customs gained him the admiration and lasting respect of the people he conquered, but it alienated his army.
Yeah.
It was the cost of a crown is what I called the senior seminar.
I don't mean to stop this, but I gotta get ready.
Yeah, you're good, man. Hey, thank you so much for having me on.
Oh yeah, you're welcome anytime, man. Come whenever you want. I could listen to this all day long. I love this stuff. But good luck on your launch. It's gonna be 9 o'clock on Bancroft.
I guess it's gonna be 9 o'clock now. Yeah.
Okay. I'll tell people to go over there because I'm going on at 8:30, and we'll try to get people to go. But this was a lot of fun. I enjoy this. I would, as much as I love talking about comic books, I love talking about mythology and Greek history. So this is a pleasure. We could talk all three. So come back.
Absolutely, man. Have a good stream, and hopefully we'll see some of you guys at 9.
All right. See you guys. Bye-bye.